Okay, why don't we start now?
Okay.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jerry McHugh Jr., President, San Juan Resources. Good morning, listeners, viewers, and attendees. We know your time is valuable, so thank you for joining our San Juan IQ today. We try to tailor each monthly rundown to a topic which affects the San Juan Basin, highlight the basin, and focus on key elements of what's happening in this hydrocarbon province. That's what improving our San Juan IQ has been about for nearly a year now. This is our eighth session here. Today we've got a special guest and topic for today's IQ, and I call it crude oil takeaway. And we're going to hear from Bob O'Neill, shown on the screen here at Whiptail Midstream in Tulsa. This is one of my favorite topics in the E&P business, and that's the transport, logistics, and movement of crude oil. And we'll obviously focus here on what's happening specifically in the San Juan. However, I want to share a little known factoid about the unique San Juan crude takeaway story. Something here. Oil from Colorado Price Gramps Field, which was owned by the Lafayette Hughes family. I'm trying to get to show you something here. Okay. There we go. Okay. This is a color photo of oil being moved up Cumbres Pass. This was a pipeline to rail connection northeast out of the basin. From the 1930s to 1964, oil traveled via pipeline across the Continental Divide to holding tanks and to a narrow gauge loading dock in Chama, New Mexico. The pipeline system was largely a siphon with no en route pumping stations. There are reports that the pipe actually traveled in a wooden box for several large sections. It was insulated with sawdust to keep the oil warm and fluid enough to make the trip. From here, it was loaded on oil tankers from Chama and was shipped via rail over Cumbres Pass to the refinery. It's called the Oriental Refinery in Alamosa. At peak production of 1,300 barrels of oil per day, oil was shipped up Cumbres Pass's 4% grade and on down to Alamosa Refinery. This production and the rail service kept the Denver, Rio Grande, and Western Railroad operating year-round over Cumbres Pass with up to 11 tanker cars per trip. And I can see here. I can show you one of these tanker cars. It's quite fascinating. There you go. There were 11 of those. There are still some around, they say, near it in the Chama area. But I think you probably have to look pretty hard to find what's going on with those tanker cars up there. The transport by rail continued until '64, when the service was terminated due to a refinery fire at the Alamosa plant. It just wasn't worth it to fix the refinery at that point. So after 1964, barrels were then trucked to Farmington after the rail transport ceased. According to production figures, by 1976, Gramps Field had accumulated 8.5 million barrels of oil and had an EUR estimated of 7.2 million barrels. And ironically, this was in about a 2-section area in the Gramps Field. So it was they were drilling on 5-acre spacing. I'm not sure it made it to that 7.2 because the field was plugged out in the 1980s by the Gramps errors. So moving on, we will focus here on the San Juan Basin production. This is the production graph from the San Juan, and Bob and I were just talking. We think it's only just in the San Juan Basin, New Mexico. So San Juan is not typically your oily basin. You can see the gas, the Fruitland gas here, which grew very, very steadily. But you can also see the oil production, which started in this graph starts in the 50s and continues on up into the current day. Nonetheless, San Juan is a long-term basin with significant hydrocarbon production and crude production over the years. Then we've got one other thing I was going to share, and I'll get to our guest. Really, we'll get to that later. Okay, let's get on to Bob O'Neill. Bob leads the commercial and business development efforts of Whiptail Midstream. His role includes coordinating all day-to-day commercial activities for the current asset base in the San Juan Basin, as well as business development, both within and outside the existing asset footprint. O'Neill has been part of Whiptail Midstream since its founding in March of 2016. Bob has nearly 10 years of midstream experience. He has been previously had been with Rimrock Energy and Williams before that. Bob, take it from here.
All right. Thank you, Jerry. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me today, and thank you for putting these on. This has been very helpful to, I think, a lot of the players in the San Juan Basin, as we've had a fairly slow year here in 2020, to something to take our minds off the day-to-day and learn more about the basin that we all love and enjoy. So I appreciate you having me, and I appreciate you putting these together. I guess first and foremost, I'll just make a little disclaimer. Anything I say today is just the opinion of Bob O'Neill, and I do not speak for Whiptail Midstream. But aside from that, I know you had said that you wanted to make this a much more conversational type of presentation. I don't have a formal slide deck or anything, so I guess I'll let you take the Q&A.
Okay. Well, my first question is, where did Whiptail get its name? I mean, that's kind of an interesting name.
So Whiptail, we actually have had a hard time coming up with a name initially. We had one name, and then through some back channels, we're told that maybe that was not proper due to copyright and some other reasons, or trademark, excuse me. But we wanted to tip our cap to New Mexico, given the fact that our assets are all in New Mexico. And in searching around for something to make sure that we were honoring the state of New Mexico, we found that the whiptail lizard is the state reptile for New Mexico. And so went from there. And it's kind of a funny name. We get a lot of looks and questions whenever we bring it up, but it's one that we find endearing and have come to enjoy over the years, and are happy to have it.
And I've read a little bit about you. We've gotten to know each other the last couple of years at some association meetings and around the basin. Talk about how Whiptail got in the basin, and what was just briefly talk about how that all happened.
Yeah, so Whiptail was founded in 2016. We actually, a majority of our management team has experience in the San Juan Basin. We were all once Williams employees and actually worked Williams Four Corners assets. Josh Lamberton and myself based out of Tulsa, and then Don Wickberg, who was over the San Juan Basin assets for Williams for a number of years. So we had always had a lot of knowledge and love for the San Juan Basin. Josh and I actually left Williams in 2015 and joined Rimrock Energy Partners, and we were looking at different assets to either acquire or to build new. And about that time, some of our former coworkers that were then at WPX Energy, which was formerly a part of Williams. They had indicated that they were looking to sell their San Juan Basin gathering system, which consisted of an oil, natural gas, and water system, 3 lines in 1 ditch, focused on the Gallup oil play. We had some experience, obviously, with the play and with WPX. Knew them well, knew a lot about the play, because when we were with Williams, we were obviously gathering gas for them coming from that area, and found it interesting. At the same time, we were talking with various financial backers on how to finance the acquisition, and ended up partnering with I Squared Capital, their global infrastructure fund, and we're able to pull that transaction across the finish line. Actually signed the documents on December 31st, 4 a.m. in the morning of 2015. And then we're closed on that acquisition on March 9th of 2016. So obviously February of 2016, if anybody recalls, oil actually dropped to $26 a barrel. And it was a pretty interesting period of time between sign and close. But nonetheless, we closed on that transaction and have been operating that system and growing that system ever since. Since that point in time, our goal was really, we had WPX as our one customer. Our goal was to continue to grow that and add additional customers who were operating in the play alongside watching WPX grow. And, we were able to do that in a number of ways. I know Jay Paul gave us a shout out whenever he presented, so I'll give Jay Paul a shout out. The guys from Lagos Resources are one of our favorite customers and a great group over there. But continue to our goal has been to continue to grow that asset, to grow our footprint and grow alongside the producer community in the southern San Juan. Obviously, 2018, WPX sold their position to Enduring, and Canada then sold subsequently in late 2018 to DJR Energy. Continued to see activity, and then we've had some permitting delays in 2019, and then obviously 2020's had its own set of issues, as we all know. But I think from a Whiptail's perspective, the future is still pretty bright for the southern San Juan Basin. I think permitting may be slow ongoing, but I think aside from that, activity is still going to occur. I think I'm kind of bullish on oil prices once we get demand back, because I think we'll see a supply shock at some point. But we still have a very positive outlook for the future of the San Juan Basin and activity levels increasing moving forward. So, that's kind of Whiptail's MO. We really are focused on efficiency and making sure that putting 3 lines in 1 ditch, as I've talked about, so that you don't have one company building a gas line to the location, one company building an oil line, and one company building a water, or deciding to truck the water or the oil. We try to build efficiency in building all 3 to 1 location, and helping out the producer, not only from hopefully a cost efficiency perspective, but also a reliability perspective. Driving trucks to location in the San Juan Basin is extremely arduous and difficult task, and as a result shows itself a lot of times in the differentials that we see. And moving that oil and water by pipeline, we feel like is a much more reliable way to transport that crude oil and water, and should reflect itself to our customers. So at the same time, with a lot of the initiatives that we're seeing right now throughout the United States and globally, we're trying to take trucks off the road and eliminate emissions and eliminate just truck traffic generally in the southern San Juan Basin. So again, we continue to be very bullish on the play, on the basin, and are excited to see what 2021 and beyond shows.
It's always good to have a new year, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So when you first came in the basin, how much oil, how much gas were you moving, and then where are you now? Have things dropped off this year with slowdown? Is Enduring, some of your other customers, have they had shut-ins? What's the volume picture? Because at the end of the day, that's partly how you make your money. I'm guessing mostly. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're effectively a toll road. So you need cars on the toll road to make money, and at the same time, you also need molecules flowing through our pipelines to make money. So, I think relatively since we started in 2016, you've seen some peaks and valleys slightly, but production has kind of held flat. You've seen drilling activity increase and then decrease at different periods of times, and it's really kind of acted as a maintenance drilling rather than seeing a lot of growth. Obviously, 2020 has been tough on everybody in the world, specifically the oil industry in the United States, and that has not unaffected the industry in the San Juan Basin. So we've seen some decline here in 2020, but I would say from beginning to today, our production on the system has stayed relatively flat, moving around. Today we're moving around 10,000 barrels a day, and close to 30 million a day in gas. And at acquisition, it was north of that's slightly, but again, it's ebbed and flowed, and I would say really stayed fairly flat on average for the last 5 years.
Okay, so there have been a few cycles even in the 4 years that you've owned the property, 4.5 years that you've owned it. Quite frankly.
Yeah.
I remember
Yes.
the first part of 16, oil dropped to like $26 at that point. So that's kind of a gut wrencher thing to start a business when oil is $27 a barrel.
Yeah, absolutely. Oil rebounded the second half of 16, and actually we saw activity continue second half of 16 into 17 and 18. And then obviously transition from WPX to Enduring, and then in Canada DJR, et cetera. You've seen, again, activity has continued with different players at different times, but really 2019 got slow just because we had some permitting issues with as a result of the Dene case and some other items. But you still had rigs running in 2019, and in 2020, just obviously the brakes came crashing down. And so we haven't seen much activity in 2020, but I think 2021 plans are already being made for additional activity, assuming that pricing holds up. I think there's still a lot of question around demand coming back as a result of COVID, and then also what is OPEC Plus going to do? What is the Biden administration going to do as it pertains to Iran and any lifted sanctions as a result of that? But assuming demand comes back and there's not some out of the ordinary supply shock to the system on the positive side, I think we'll actually probably see supply shortage. I mean, there hasn't been a whole lot of activity in 2020. And so, again, assuming that happens, I don't have a crystal ball. I wish I did, but I think the good thing about the San Juan Gallup play is that it really, it's a shallow play, and the wells are not necessarily expensive to drill, and they've got very, very good production for the price of those wells. So the break even, if you will, is lower than I think a lot of people give it credit for.
Okay. Besides operators that you're pulling from Lagos, Enduring, DJR, than any other operators that you're pulling from or hoping to pull from here in the this next year, a couple of years?
I mean, we all know the players. It's the usual suspects, but any operator that has acreage down in the area, we are very, very excited to do business with potentially. And we right now, aside from any operator-owned assets, we're the only true wellhead oil gathering pipeline system in the San Juan Basin, which is something we're very proud of, and we hope to maintain that position through preventing any competition from coming in, but also just through our customer service. I mean, we pride ourselves on being a very service-oriented company. That's what we do. And if our customers aren't happy, it's going to be hard to try to convince new producers to come in and to tie into us as well. But specifically, Jerry, you know, we've got our thumb on all the different opportunity sets that may be coming to fruition in the Southern San Juan Basin, and we would be happy to tie in any and all of those.
Okay. Would this be a good time to look at the map that you sent
Sure.
over?
Yeah.
I know you're around the 44 store.
Yeah. So I know this is a very detailed map, but
can you guys, can everybody see it? Can you see it okay, Bob? Because
yes, I can.
Then everybody else can too.
Absolutely can. So if you look, I don't know if you can see where that pink line intersects. You see 550 coming through, but that pink line intersects right there. Mm-hmm. That is effectively, that's the Liebrook terminal for Marathon, and the old Liebrook plant that Harvest owns as well. So if that orients people a little bit, a majority of our system is to the west of Liebrook. We do obviously have some there to the east. But we right now operate close to 300 miles of aggregate pipeline. Again, that's oil, gas, and water. And we deliver at 2 locations into Marathon there at Liebrook, where you pointed to. And then if you look over to the west, there's that tie-in. That big pink line is the big 16-inch line that Marathon operates, called the Tex New Mex pipeline. We actually have a delivery directly into that as well. We have, I won't point them out specifically, but we also have a number of connections into both Harvest and Enterprise for gas takeaway. I think 6 in total. And so we were able to move volumes around as as capacities shift or different things may occur downstream of us, to shift those volumes and try to maintain reliability as best we can. And from a water perspective, we don't have any disposal, but we do have at the 4-1 facility, which is right there next to Liebrook. We do have water storage capability and water offload. So trucks can come in from there and either take that water to disposal, or there actually is a basin recycling facility that was once operational just down the street. So that is that's effectively Whiptail in a map. Again, okay. We've grown this asset base over time and are hopeful to continue to grow it.
You've got a good footprint there. I'm guessing that you hook up a number of wells in this area that are probably the enduring wells.
Yeah, that's more of the legacy stuff that WPX had drilled early on in play. And then obviously they moved further to the west as time went on.
Okay, it's along this backbone here.
Uh-huh.
Okay. What's this line? Is this a gas line that comes up here? Or is this part of an oil line too?
Yeah, that's we call that the Jalapeno pipeline. That is a gas pipeline that delivers up into Enterprise, and hopefully, that was an acquisition. We hope that is a strategic opportunity pipeline for us in the future. We already have an east-west transverse of the play with our system, and that was really an opportunity to try to get the north-south and to be an aggregator through an area that we feel like may show some potential here in the future.
And you
already has in some of those.
You bought a jalapeno from who?
I'm not sure I can say, Jerry,
okay.
but
okay. I'm not too active in this area, so I don't know all that.
I understand.
But okay, so you talked about the water. One of the big things everyone's talking about is recycling, reusing water, making sure that we're not going to be putting produced water. In other words, being able to retreat it. Are you involved in anything like that, or is that the basin?
Yeah, no, we're not. We've looked at those opportunities, and I think if it ever were to get to scale, again, consistent activity level that also, the amount of water in the San Juan Basin is relatively low from a water cut perspective.
Right.
And we're seeing 10 to 20% of oil volumes is what's coming out from a water perspective versus, say, the Permian Basin and the Delaware, where you've got 5 to 10 barrels of water for every 1 barrel of oil. So it's almost it's an inverse, really. And so that limits some of the opportunities as far as water recycling, water even disposal, and trying to aggregate volumes for water disposal. And so to date, really the parties that were already doing those activities within the basin have continued to do so. And we've looked at opportunities to work with those entities and to try to figure out something that makes life easier effectively on the producer. And we'll continue to look at those as activity increases in the play. But to date, the water has been limited. In addition, the completions that are occurring down here for the most part are nitrogen foam fracs, and so the water that's required for those is less than a typical slick water. So a little different, just different demand structure. But if ever there was a demand to look at some of those opportunities, we certainly would.
Okay. Well, you'd be a supplier. The good news is there's not a lot of produced water. You do get some flow back on fracs. I know some companies down here looking at more of a slick water frac in this area versus nitrogen. So I guess we'll see how that comes in the next couple of years as more wells are drilled. I can go to the next slide.
I'm not a completions engineer.
Okay.
But I did sleep at a Holiday Inn Express last night, so
I just know that. We can go to the next slide. Is there anything you want to?
Yeah, just to give everybody a little bit of background on San Juan oil infrastructure. This is dated. Obviously, Western Refining merged with Tesoro to form Endeavor, and then about a year later, ended up being Endeavor was acquired by Marathon. I know we don't have anybody from Marathon on here, but I thought I would just kind of give a little bit of an overview of the Four Corners gathering system and then some of Marathon's ancillary assets that support the San Juan Basin. This is the Four Corners gathering system. Pretty self-explanatory. You can see if you look at between that number 3 and number 4, that is effectively where Whiptail's system resides. So we have a connection there where that arrow is at the number 3, and then we've also got a connection there at Liebrook. And so just to orient everybody, but historically, volumes in the San Juan Basin all moved through this Four Corners gathering system to the Gallup refinery or Ceniza refinery. What you don't see on here is there's actually a pipeline that ties into Bisti coming from the Aneth field up in the Greater Paradox Basin, and I think that's a partnership with the Navajo, and I don't know who operates that now. It was Elk, but they have a pipeline that they own together that moves that volume into Bisti and then onto the Marathon system. If you move to the next slide, so this, from that Four Corners system, you can see that volumes move down the Tex-New-Mex pipeline. Now, historically, this actually, the slide is from about 2014, 2015. So historically, that Tex-New-Mex pipeline actually moved volume from the Permian Basin up to the San Juan Basin to supply the Gallup refinery. San Juan Basin volumes had declined basically from the 80s on, and looking at your chart, Jerry, but as those volumes declined, there no longer was enough crude to fill both the Gallup and the Bloomfield refinery. As everybody knows, the Bloomfield refinery was mothballed at one point in time. But then they started moving these volumes from the Permian Basin to fill the Gallup refinery. That all changed really when WPX and Canada got active in starting in 2012 really within Canada, but then 2013, 2014, volumes started to increase significantly in the San Juan Basin, which then no longer required Permian barrels to be delivered to Gallup to help fill that refinery. In fact, what you had was a potential for more volume than they actually needed at Gallup being produced out of the basin. And so at the time, Western Refining Logistics decided to reverse that Tex New Mex pipeline to take any excess volume above the capacity of Gallup, which I believe at the time was 25,000 barrels a day, and to move those volumes south down to the Permian. And in fact, they were delivering those excess barrels into their El Paso refinery, or blending them at Mason Station to deliver to their El Paso refinery. So moving on to the next slide, Jerry. This is effectively what we see today. Absent now, as of this year, the Gallup refinery being shut down. With that refinery shut down, 100% of the San Juan production that's gathered through the Marathon system moves down that Tex New Mex pipeline to Mason Station, which is just outside of Orla, Texas, if any of you are familiar with that area. And then from Orla over to Wink Hub. There is actually Marathon is a partial owner in a pipeline called Gray Oak that does have an origination point near Mason Station. So volumes are delivered there, but they also have the opportunity to move into Plains, into Cactus, and the other different pipelines that connect in at Wink, which Wink is again a big hub in the Permian area for pipeline origination. So I'll pause and see if you have any follow-ups.
Yeah, so that the San Juan crude then looks like it's really competing or going up against the Permian crude, which probably affects our differential. I know we had a question about that a week ago. Somebody right off the bat had a question about the differentials. Any relief, any structural things can be done out there. And then another question, it's just kind of loaded here, the question of the day of differentials and what's going to happen with the refinery. Mothballed, we've heard they're going to put cooking oil in there and do some sort of renewable plan, something like that.
So first, just talking differentials high level, Whiptail is not a crude oil marketer. We don't buy barrels or sell barrels. We are just a transporter of them. So I can't speak specifically on differentials. I can speak at a high level just from a general midstream perspective. First off, as I talked about earlier, historically barrels were trucked in the San Juan Basin, and they still are. A large volume of barrels are trucked today. Trucking in the San Juan Basin is extremely expensive. Just is it anybody who's been out on a lease road in the southern San Juan Basin knows that if you get any rain or snow or any type of weather, you're seeing the pup and bobtails out with the pup on the side of the highway and the bobtail going back to do milk runs basically to fill that up. And they've got a chain up, you've got rut roll issues. And so trucking in the San Juan Basin is extremely expensive. So that's one portion of that differential that I think sometimes gets lost, but it's a big portion of it. Secondary to that, we're really in a geographical area it's a bit isolated, and so there is a cost to move that crude to a refinery. Now the Gallup refinery was obviously close, but that as Marathon has publicly stated, the Gallup refinery was one of their most expensive refineries to operate, and as a result, that refinery required crude to be bought at a certain level to make sure that it was profitable. So, I think there's a lot of different dynamics going into crude differentials within the San Juan Basin. As far as what's going to happen in the future, I don't see the refinery coming back. There was some publicly stated, Marathon did have some sulfur upgrades that they were going to have to make on that refinery to make it comply with some regulations that actually began in 2020. It was either that or they were going to have to buy sulfur tax credits. And so, some additional justification would have had to have been made either from a capital perspective or ongoing expense perspective to keep that operational. In addition, with demand really just tanking in 2020 as a result of the pandemic, it seems that from Marathon's perspective that they could fill demand within the Four Corners region and, even Arizona, Albuquerque, et cetera, from El Paso or other means, without operating that Gallup refinery, which as Marathon has publicly stated, was one of their most expensive refineries to operate in their portfolio. So I don't see that refinery coming back. I think with some of the regulatory issues and again, shifts in supply demand for refined products, it probably just from a cost perspective doesn't make sense. Now, the good news for the San Juan Basin is that really doesn't matter. Whether the Gallup refinery is operational or not, there are still outlets for crude oil out of the San Juan Basin. And one of those is obviously the Tex-New Mex pipeline that you see here that moves oil down to the Permian Basin. The Permian Basin, from there, oil can go to local refining market, Artesia, El Paso, et cetera, or from Mason Station, Wink, all the way to the Gulf Coast. There is connectivity to the mid-continent as well, to get oil back to Cushing. I think what we've seen in the market, though, is that all barrels want to move to the Gulf Coast. There is an excess of pipeline capacity out of the Permian Basin moving to the Gulf Coast, and a lot of those pipelines are actually starving for barrels and need barrels to move through their capacity that exists. And so you've seen discounted rates. Actually, Midland is trading or has been trading above Cushing, and the Gulf Coast is trading above Midland. I mean, it's this pipeline capacity has really changed the dynamic for crude oil coming out of West Texas. And then, we're at the end of the spoke here, but it also could potentially affect San Juan crude. So I hope in the future that we see differentials drop as a result of just an improving market out of Midland. However, again, we're not a crude oil marketer. There's one pipeline out of the basin. There are some other rail opportunities out of the basin as those opportunities, differentials, for instance, back in the early days of this play, or the early days of WPX and Canna, you saw an LLS blowout where Louisiana Light was trading at a far premium to WTI. And so you could actually justify railing all the way from the San Juan Basin to Louisiana and still make a very, very good margin on those barrels. So that actually drove differentials down in the play for a period of time. But again, I'm hopeful that moving forward we see some relief on differential. I'm again not a marketer, but more oil results in potential competition, and I think the San Juan Basin, the ups and the downs of volume and activity, has limited some of those opportunities. But again, I think the future is likely to be much better for the basin as it pertains to differentials, just through some of the dynamics downstream.
Okay. These lines here are these red lines, I guess, are Marathon, correct? And this is they're essentially not being used now. I guess you could route those down to the Ceniza refinery and put them on rail, or if Marathon wanted to do that. Is there a play for that?
You'd have to talk to Marathon about that. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, that's certainly, they've got rail facility there. And if there were an opportunity to rail barrels because it made more sense than piping them down to the Permian, I would think that would be a certain opportunity set that they would be looking at. But I really, aside from mothballing that, as they put it, indefinitely, that refinery, I'm not really sure what the future holds outside of that, and I would be speculating otherwise. But
Right, yeah. Well, I mean, you just see the connecting the dots, and you look at opportunities, and you see if the economics of those kinds of things can work.
Yeah,
that's really the main thing. Well,
and I would assume Marathon's looking at all those options.
Yeah, well, that was a really good rundown on that. I'm guessing too that the Aneth barrels are competing then with the San Juan barrels to get down this Texas New Mex line. Is that right? You're right.
It's not really competing. So that Texas New Mex line is a 16-inch pipeline.
Okay.
And so it can move, I think, at the current pump capacity, from what I've understood, it can move 75,000 barrels a day. And then if you were to add some pump capacity, it could move north of 100. So there is no competition as it pertains to capacity on that pipeline. Really, the Aneth barrels, they have their cost of transportation to get down to Bisti, and then from there, they're effectively just blended into the San Juan production.
Sure. Okay.
That's not really taking into consideration any type of quality, but I don't think there's a significant quality disparity between Aneth barrels and San Juan barrels. The San Juan, honestly, the San Juan barrel is it's a very nice barrel from a crude quality perspective. You're looking at 39 to 41, 42 API gravity, slightly high on little high on paraffin, but not enough that it really matters. And so, it's a great blend barrel. And when I say that, you asked a question, I think previously to me, Jerry, about condensates. A lot of times what'll happen with the condi in the basin is they'll blend it, blend it in with the crude oil, and there's enough space there that it still meets the spec for WTI crude. And so it's effectively uplifting the value of the condensate.
It all works together.
Yep.
There are some marketers which are taking the condensate or the oil to the railroad sidings here in Ceniza. Those barrels I know go to California. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so. Again, over time, they've gone different places. For a period, they were going to Louisiana. I think California trades at a premium to WTI. So that offers an opportunity to cover the cost of transportation effectively.
It seems like every 10 or 15 years, there's a push to, hey, let's bring in rail up here, as we saw with the initial factoid about oil moving from ramps out of the San Juan Basin this way. The Rio Grande was unable to connect up here with the, it wasn't I-40 at the time, but they could not connect up here with Gallup, could not get across the Navajo Indian reservation. I remember when I was first starting off in 80, they had a bond bill to build a pipeline up here, or not a pipeline, but a rail line to help service Farmington. That could have made a whole lot of difference between frac sand and pipe and everything in the world. So we're really at the mercy of trucks and some of these old pipelines. So
absolutely. And I know, that rail spur gets brought up, I feel like, every few years, and I'm not in the know enough to know why it fails. I know a lot of it is, it would require a partnership with the Navajo Nation. And last I'd heard, they were talking through that. But again, I don't know. Without a big activity boom, I don't know that would occur. So we'll see. But yeah, without really any type of infrastructure in the San Juan Basin, whether it's oil, rail, oil pipelines, rail, et cetera. It's all, more activity will justify more projects to go forward.
Right. Well, and I mean, I think
chicken
the
and
effort,
egg.
yeah, I'm sorry.
I said it's kind of a chicken and the egg.
Yeah. Well, I think of the effort that the Governor Richardson put in to do the Santa Fe to Albuquerque Roadrunner line. And that will never pay out. I mean, you can take that kind of effort and put it in this area, and you would have payout, you would have commerce, the Navajos, the San Juan, everybody in the world would benefit with a pipeline going this way versus that boondoggle of a roadrunner thing to, make someone feel good that they have a train running from Santa Fe to Albuquerque, which has about, 5 riders a day, kind of a crazy world. But I digress.
Yeah.
Yeah. So total San Juan liquids, we talked about that. You had some general ideas. I mean, our previous graph showed about 25,000 barrels a day. Are we still around that area then?
Yeah. So if you look at San Juan proper, I think it's probably in the 20 to 25,000 barrel a day range. And when I say San Juan proper, I mean New Mexico. Slight barrels coming from Colorado, but not a lot of real liquids production coming from Colorado side. Really, where you see additive production in what I call the greater San Juan basket is going to be from Aneth, and that's probably running in the 5,000 to 7,000 barrel a day range, from my guess. So, I would think that the San Juan's right around 30,000. Greater San Juan's around 30,000 barrels a day. Yeah, it was. Last year was north of that. I mean, we were close to 35, but
been some decline, and the companies having to back up to maintain the production.
Right.
Okay. Well, I think we've had a good turnout. Is there anything else you'd like to add here, Bob? One thing I did want to show you, we can go back a bit. This kind of pulls us back into the San Juan again. This is a pipeline map that I got in the 80s when the Tex New Mex line was moving barrels southeast like we saw. Someone had penciled in Jal here, and then I think our concern was on the east side of the San Juan Basin. Cañada had a Yavez line. This might have even been their exhibit in a. I think it was a giant. But it just shows how much they all went to the eastern edge of the San Juan Basin, pull this Cañada oil. There was a spur which picked up the Gavilan Lindroth oil, which I think all of this has been abandoned, I think, since probably in the last 15, 20 years. It would probably take a ton of work to get portions of this back running. There always could be options. There's a business development opportunity here for you, Bob.
If you start drilling some wells out there, we'll look at it.
Yes, and their DJR is got some ducks lined up that we learned from Jack Rosenthal's chair in October for the San Juan Mancos oil. So they've been completing in some Mancos zones. In addition to some of their base zones, which in Canada had originally done. The Tosito was, in Canada's mainstay, and then it has grown in this I call it the south central area of the San Juan Basin. So they're seeing quite some things. So anyways, another thing I think to point out here is EOG has got a couple, 3.5 townships leased down here, and they're in a permitting process for a number of locations and pads out there. So that's been a recent development in the San Juan in the last year and a half. So do you know anything about that? Have you talked with them, or it may be very, very early stage?
From what I understand, it's very, very preliminary. And again, I know probably as much as you do about it. So certainly a very, very exciting opportunity for the basin. EOG is a best-in-class operator as it pertains to horizontal drilling and completions in the lower 48. And anytime their name is attached to an area, it certainly raises some eyebrows. So, I think it's overall a very, very positive piece of news for the basin. And I wish those guys all the success in the world. I think, as the saying goes, high tides raise all ships. I think that's one that certainly could be, a jolt in the arm or shot in the arm for the San Juan Basin oil play. So very, very hopeful to see and excited to see what they do down in that area. Hasn't been a lot of activity down there, but certainly exciting.
Okay. Well, I think there's been a good turnout today for our San Juan IQ, and we think that next month, don't know what I've had some people give suggestions of what does 2021 look like for the San Juan Basin. So we may be looking at that. Also, keep in mind that on our website, we have all these monthly presentations available for you to look at sanjuanbasin.com. You can find us there. Anyways, I think to see the crude oil development in this part of the world, what Whiptail has done, really putting it out there when oil is $27 a barrel. That was, I'm glad you stayed in there, Bob, and kept things going, because that's a time when people run for the exits when oil drops that low. So as I remember, that was quite a time at that first part of 2016. So
Absolutely.
Thanks. Anything else you'd like to add, Bob? It's sure been good.
I think all I'd say is that the San Juan Basin, I've heard it said, and I'll say it myself, but if you can operate in the San Juan Basin, I think you can operate about anywhere. It comes with its unique set of challenges, whether that be oil differential, regulatory, road conditions, what you name it. But the one thing I will say about the San Juan Basin is it's a great basin to work in. It certainly is a great community of producers and individuals, and it's certainly one that Whiptail has enjoyed being a part of and will continue to enjoy being a part of. So long live the San Juan Basin, I guess.
Okay, well, thank you, Bob. Appreciate it. Thanks for your presentation, and we'll look forward to seeing you in person when we can actually see people again in person. So,
all right. Thanks, Jerry. Have a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays.
Okay, Happy Holidays to everybody else, and thank you for being with us this day. Bye-bye.
Bye.